Today's video was sponsored by my good friends over at Spider Dude Comics. You can check out their links in the description below. You guys can save 10% off of any order by using the code JOURNOS10. This code never expires. And also, if they have any other promotions going on their website, you can always piggyback the JOURNOS10 to get that extra 10% off as well. You can search by Marvel or DC or certain ages like Silver to Golden, or your favorite characters like mine, Spider-Man. You guys can see a little bit of what they got going on here. Again, Silver Age to modern books. Stuff is extremely well priced. If you know me by now, you know that I only push those that I truly support and that I truly believe in. So again, guys, go check out SpiderDudeComics.com. You can also follow them on Instagram, and you can check out their YouTube channel by finding their link in the description below or finding their YouTube link on their website. What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journos, Comics, and Pop Culture. Today, we're looking at a statement and a question. Second prints are not reprints. That's the statement. Or are they? Now, that's the question. This is one that a lot of people, I think, get confused and might have opposing viewpoints on, and we are going to address it today. Before we get into it, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take the time to do so. Check out all the awesome links below. With that out of the way, we're asking the question, are second prints reprints? Here's the thing, folks. It's not that black and white. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring up the dictionary definition of reprint. And I'm going to tell you right now, if we're looking at the simple, clear definition of the word, then technically second prints are essentially reprints. Let's look at that definition right now. All right, you can see on screen that there is a verb and a noun for the use of the word reprint. For the verb, the definition is to print again. So, again, it's explaining the process of reprinting something that's not really what we're looking for. We are looking for that noun definition, which is right here. All right. A subsequent printing of a book already published that preserves the identical text of the previous printing. So what does this mean? Subsequent. What does that mean? Well, following the first. The first time it happens, something follows it and you're reprinting it. Now, what does preserving the identical text of the previous printing mean? It doesn't mean that it has to be completely identical in terms of the cover. Like, that there's True Believers, there's, facsimile reprints, which, even have a different price tag and they have the barcode, so they don't look identical. It's preserving the text of the book. So it's what's inside of the book that is being preserved that makes it a reprint. So therefore, you can look at a second print and a reprint such as a True Believers or a facsimile edition as both being reprints, because what's happening on the inside of those books are being preserved. It's telling that same story, right? Now, that right there, that definition, again, it states that second prints are technically reprints. But here's where the grays come in, and it's not that black and white. The reason why second prints and third prints and fourth prints, later prints, differ from your standard comic book reprint, and of course we're talking about comic books here, is because they both serve different purposes. Look at what you have on screen here. You have a True Believers that reprints Amazing Spider-Man #1. This book came out decades after the original printing. Same as the Marvel Milestone, the Masterworks edition or whatever, the floppies of that came out in the 90s. Those are clear reprints because they're serving a purpose. And what is that purpose? That purpose is to reprint a collectible, reprint a comic book that is now legendary in its right. It's iconic. It's a classic. It probably has some type of value to it, but really it's saying this book is iconic for a reason. It's been around for a long time, and we want to retell that story in a way for readers to get their hands on it for $1 for True Believers, or cover price of a standard comic book, and so forth, right? Now let's look at the second prints. Right here on screen, you have Ultimate Fallout 4 second print, and you have Amazing Spider-Man 361 second print. What's different about these books? The purpose that they served. These books served a purpose to create a supply for a immediate demand where the first print was underprinted. Let me repeat that. A second print comes about when the demand for the first print exceeds the supply. They usually come out immediate, some immediate time subsequently after that first print. And that could be maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month, maybe a couple months. And it's because when that first printing came, there was such a high demand that the publishers are saying, we're going to go back and push out a second printing because we know that there's still such a high demand. Now, of course, there's crossover here because a first printing that has a high demand and a lack of supply, basic economics, when that demand exceeds supply, it's already going to drive the value of that first printing up. But again, it doesn't matter because it's all about tending to that immediate demand. So when Ultimate Fallout 4 second printing came out, Ultimate Fallout 4 first printing wasn't worth hundreds of dollars at that point. I'm going to assume that it was selling for a premium on the second market, the first print. But the second print was printed because they realized that they released this new book. There was much more of a demand than what we printed. Same thing for Carnage. Carnage's first appearance, Amazing Spider-Man 361. The majority of second prints and third prints are pushed out because of a lack of supply from the first print being able to keep up with demand. And I'm going to show you all a couple articles that we're going to review today to give more context. First article here, this is an article that's 9 years old. All right, and it states here, Image says second printing is nothing but under-ordered misspelled. Ironically, this article being so old, the original interview with Eric Stevenson, who was a Image publisher at the time, it's a dead link. I can't get to it, but just taking from the headlines, you could see what this publisher with Image was trying to say. Second printing is nothing but under-ordered misspelled. Now, what the publisher was talking about was that, we as a publisher need to be making sure that we're understanding the demand to the best that we can to make sure that first printing has enough there instead of having to resort to going to a second print. But that's neither here nor there. But he's basically declaring the intent of the second print. What is the purpose of the second print? Well, we under-ordered on the first print. We got to go back to press. Image's publisher is stating it right here. It's clear. I'm going to bring up another article. All right. And this is where that gray area gets blurred. And I think the consumers and the collectors need to understand the difference. This author with earlyretirementdiary.com makes a statement that I feel it's not necessarily inaccurate, but it's misleading. Now, here's another thing. This article is full of grammatical errors, and let me tell you all, anybody that has a blog or anybody that's writing for even, a solid, reputable source, you better make sure your grammar is on point, because if it's not, it's going to devalue the reader's ability to solidify your argument as fact, right? You're not going to be taken seriously if your article is full of grammatical errors, and this article is horrible. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's just a fact. So this article is about, are comic reprints worth anything? An investigation. Ultimately, I believe what he's trying to say here, that reprints should have value. I actually made a video recently about 7 reprints that are undervalued, right? But I'm going to focus on what he said right here. Second prints or reprints. That's a strong statement. Now, again, by the textbook definition, I'm not disagreeing with him. But like I said, it's not that black and white. Let's look at what he says. This is the area I want to focus on. And again, pardon the grammar here. Reprints are just another word for second prints, except they mostly apply to Silver and Bronze Age books. I have no knowledge of golden books. If the modern second prints are getting more pricey, it makes no sense that reprints are as cheap as they are. What he's trying to say here is, if modern second prints are becoming more pricey, right? Why aren't these Silver or Bronze Age reprints increasing in price as well? Well, the reason why is because they both serve two different purposes. That's why you can't just sit here and say second prints or reprints. And that's why you can't sit here and just say reprints is just another word for second prints. It's not true. We can cling to the textbook definition all we want, but we as collectors, bringing context to the argument here, know for a fact that they serve two different purposes. You can't, it's like apples to oranges here. Apples and oranges are both fruit, right? We know that by textbook definition, they are both fruit. They fall under that same tree, not the same fruit tree, but the same family of fruits. Same with reprints. You can look at reprints as being the fruit family and look at like the classic reprint of a classic book as being apples and the second prints as being oranges. They are not the same thing because they serve two completely different purposes. The second print has so many different more variables. People look at them differently. Well, we value the second print because it has a variant cover or it's a limited print run, right? So that's going to drive the second print up. It's not just reprinting the first story. Where you have a True Believers that is a mass-produced reprint of a classic book. Are you all following along yet? So, the point that I'm trying to make is second prints serving a different purpose than most reprints is why we can't make a blanket statement to say that they're just reprints, because they're not. There's a lot of different value that collectors can find in a second print that aren't in a standard reprint like a True Believers or a Marvel Milestone. And I agree too, though. Those standard reprints, or even the Marvel Tales, and I talked about this in that video, your Marvel's greatest reprints that were Bronze Age reprints of the Silver Age Fantastic Four books. Marvel Tales, which lasted through the Bronze and the Copper Age and so forth, which are reprintings of the classic Spider-Man books and so forth. They serve a different purpose, but there's still value there. But we have to understand the context of why the reprint or the second print or the third print are being printed. All right. At the end of the day, they all are reprints, reprinting a story that was already published. But all of them serve a different purpose, and that's why we have to look at them individually and say, should we find value in this? And I've always said this, people, if something has a limited print run, people are going to find value in that, and if they go after that on the market and demand it, it's going to drive up the value. If a second print has a variant cover, people are going to value that, and it's going to drive up the value. If it's a second printing of a first appearance like Carnage 361 or Ultimate Fallout 4, people are going to find value in that. But you know what's catching up and getting hit too? You have Marvel Tales, I believe, what is it off the top of my head? 106, which is the reprinting of Amazing Spider-Man 129, which is the first appearance of Punisher. It actually collects, or it actually has the original cover art, but with, trade dress that's changed, the background's a different color, and it's a reprinting of a first appearance of the Punisher, so people are starting to value that. Does that make sense as well? So while, again, we have to understand the context, they're not all created equally. We have to look at second prints as being their own thing, third prints being their own thing. And we have to look at reprints being different as well. People might value facsimile reprints because they look like the original book more than a True Believers, where although this True Believers #1 that you see right here, reprinting Amazing Spider-Man #1, has the original Amazing Spider-Man trade dress, some of them don't. The True Believers that reprinted Amazing Spider-Man 300 says Spider-Man and Venom. It doesn't say Amazing Spider-Man. That kind of deters some folks because they want a reprint that has the original trade dress that looks more like the original printing. All of these variables and factors are why certain reprints or certain second and third printings are not created equal. But the bottom line is that all of these later printings can absolutely gain value on the market because we value the different factors and variables that they are giving to us intrinsically within that variation of a comic book being reprinted. I want to know all of your thoughts below. But before we go, I do want to remind you all, check out the link to bcwsupplies.com in the description below. If you need comic book supplies, head over there, use the code JOURNOS to receive 10% off your order. Doesn't matter how big or small the order is, and you can use it as many times as you want.